Hello, it's a pleasure and privilege being invited to this interesting and inspiring conference and having the opportunity to present to you the fascinating ideas and the dreams of a fascinating man. Leopold-Kohr stood for a theory which was considered and estimated by many and yet also heavily criticized too. As some verdicts of contemporaries show, that we can see on the screen, a teacher from whom I have learned more than from anyone else, of great importance, first humanist professor of economics, father of the Greens, but also riot of nonsense and the ascription of a social romanticist. If you could have the next picture, the next one, then we can read it again. Course thesis that was that small states, small social units can secure a far better life than the great powers can. And small states are more peaceful and than great powers. How did Leopold-Kohr come to these conclusions? Kohr's starting point was to ask how the huge catastrophes of the 20th century, especially National Socialism, Holocaust, Second World War, could ever have happened. The main reason for Kohr lay in extreme nationalism and imperialism, the wish to continually and ruthlessly increase national dimensions. The only way to govern such huge empires was through dictatorship. Human individuality did not have any room anymore. There was a demand for conformity and assimilation. And Kohr fought against this his whole life. He described himself as being an anarchist from the 1930s on, but as a gentle anarchist, as he said. He was not violent, but believed that the best state would be that one that offered the people the most opportunities to unfold. The human dimension was therefore the center of Kohr's focus. It is the dimension which should measure all questions. Neither the state, nor religion, nor ideology, nor other abstract unit should be the basis of shaping society, but the attention to creativity and self-esteem of the individual. The smaller the social unit is, the more this can be considered. In the long run, growing too big does as much damage as growing too quickly. Therefore, Leopold-Kohr demanded, not union now, but disunion now holds the key to a future of manageable proportions. And proportions are manageable only as long as society is adjusted to man, not man to society. For man, not society, is the measure of all things. This is a key phrase of Leopold-Kohr. He also developed leading concepts for urban planning 50 years ago. He demanded town squares instead of streets. He argued for the development of pedestrian ways and areas and against the building of suburban estates. This would create more traffic, which would suffocate the towns. Livable towns, so Kohr, provide people in the closer vicinity everything they need for their daily lives, whether this be economic, social, or cultural. If towns grow too large, they have to be subdivided. New centers, new city cores have to be created. Traffic problems cannot be solved by building more streets, Kohr demanded in the 1960s, but only with shortening the distances to the needs that people need in their life. He wrote, "This is what made Salzburg, Lucca, Cambridge, or Old San Juan such lively, lovable and livable cities, that they grew as federations of plazas and squares connected by streets, not of streets, seeing in squares nothing but either parking lots or obstacles to traffic, not realizing that the obstacle to traffic is the foundation of trade. When it came to the question of life standards and living quality, Leopold-Kohr already conceived an elaborate theory in the 1960s, with which he attempted to prove that more available goods would not automatically mean a higher standard of living. For societies which are too big and dependent on keeping their size, invest too many resources to sustain their power, for example for armament and the control of their citizens. Furthermore, many resources are necessary in high-tech societies to manage the negative results of growth, which is too big, too quick and too great, for example for the transport sector. If we have a look on the next picture, we see the growth of population and the growth of consummation. The growth of consummation is increasing with the growth of population, and the biological, cultural needs to survive increase. The personal needs in big, fast societies and the power goods that are necessary to organize a large society increase. And the luxury goods, it's not expensive watches, but also a bunch of flowers, everything that is not necessary to live, is decreasing. So more goods do not mean a higher living standard. According to Kohr, many goods could be likened to what is needed to cure a headache. They do not provide people with a higher standard of living, but are necessary in order to cope with the negative consequences of growth, as it is with headaches and pills against headaches. The pills do not make us healthier, but are only necessary not to feel the headache. Our higher living standard, which is based on material things, is therefore just an aspirin living standards, as Kohr formulated it. Or in other terms, we must produce the bulk of our fabulous progress commodities in such record quantities, not for the sake of progress, but for the same reason earlier ages needed to produce much less, just to live. Kohr was also one of the first to encourage us to rethink regarding development aid. He already supported development without aid in the book with the same title in 1973. That means helping the underdeveloped societies to help themselves. He encouraged a slow autochthon development of underdeveloped nations considering their needs. Too much help would accelerate development, but would also make those being helped dependent. And there was another reason that we can read. For every unassisted development effort has the inestimable social advantage of absorbing all hands in essential employment. This is in sharp contrast to the assisted variety that starts with labor-saving equipment when there is as yet no new employment for the labor saved. Who was this man who fought against the ideology of permanent, steadily accelerating growth? I will present an interesting biography. The place of birth is not so interesting, but it's the same as the famous Christmas song Stille Nacht comes from. And this was always something that Kohr used when he was in America to remember that Austria is not Germany, even after 1938. So he used this song as a kind of political tool. He studied in Innsbruck and Vienna law and political sciences, but also spent a year in London at the renowned London School of Economics. He had contacts to high-ranking economists and Labour Party politicians. Then he made his year at the bar, but then stopped becoming a lawyer, studied political science in Vienna, spent some years in Paris at the Haute École des Études Sociales to study journalism, and went to Spain, to the Spanish Civil War. We already heard that he had talks with Ernest Hemingway, André Malraux, George Orwell, to be a journalist for the Republican side, supporting the Republican against the Franco regime. He emigrated 1938 as he was a convinced opponent of National Socialism. His grandfather on his father's side was a Jew, so he feared that he would be persecuted politically. It was also his commitment to social democratic ideas in his youth that he left his homeland and started an academic career after working for half a year in a gold mine in Canada, an academic career at the Rutgers University in New Jersey. In the 1950s, he went to San Juan, State University of San Juan at Puerto Rico, where he wrote a lot of articles for local newspapers, and where he mainly pointed out his ideas for city planning. In 1967, when the neighboring island Anguilla declared itself independent from Great Britain, he was a chief advisor. It was not a successful revolution, but Anguilla got more competencies within the British Commonwealth and as a part of Great Britain, and Kohr wanted to prove that it is his ideas of the small states work. After his retirement, he moved to Wales, where he supported the Welsh regional ideas, the Gaelic language. In 1983, he got, as one of the first, I think he was one of the first of 10 men and women to receive the Right Livelihood Honorary Award in Stockholm, the alternative Nobel Prize that is given to people who have the vision of a human society without any suppression or extortion, striving to secure the diversity and resources of our planet, as well as the ethics of justice and sustainability. In 1994, Leopold-Kohr died in Gloucester, where he spent the last 8 years of his life, and the Leopold-Kohr Academy, that is situated at the University of Salzburg. It's not as beautiful as here, but at least we have a place in the city of Salzburg. And we have a wonderful place, an old barn that is renovated in Neukirchen am Großvenediger, in the middle of the Alps. So Kohr's ideas are preserved. Leopold-Kohr's ideas for the 21st century. It's interesting that the year 2009 was the Leopold-Kohr year, not only because of the remembrance of his 100th birthday, but it was also the year of Leopold-Kohr because he was rediscovered in the discussion on the reasons for the economic and financial crisis. The lack of transparency and responsibility that are often seen as one of the main reasons for the crisis made the plea for a translucent society more important than ever. It's what Leopold-Kohr said, the mattress principle, that he sees as a method for dealing with problems like this in his typically amusing words. dealing with problems like this with a twinkle in his eyes. He says, a small cell union has the same advantages and has them for the same reasons as the newly developed and much advertised mattresses, which are built on the principle of the coexistence of a great multitude of small independent springs, rather than on this principle of unitarian construction, where all springs are tightly interlocked. So if one spring fails, there are still a lot of other springs that keep the system going. To take Kohr's criticism more serious, of course, criticism on the overdeveloped nations and institutions, we could take a look at an article by Paul Kingsnorth that was recently published in The Guardian, September 25th. And Kingsnorth stated that the economic collapse is a crisis of bigness, as you can see here. It's a crisis of too much growth. A citation, banks grew so big that their collapse would have brought down the entire global economy. To prevent this, they were bailed out with huge tranches of public money, which in turn is precipitating social crisis on the streets of Western nations. The European Union has grown so big and so unaccountable that it threatens to collapse in on itself. Corporations have grown so big that they are overwhelming democracies and building a global plutocracy to serve their own interests. The human economy as a whole has grown so big that it has been able to change the atmospheric composition of the planet and precipitate a mass extinction event. And Kingsworth names the man who inspired this critical view. It was Leopold-Kohr. Kohr has a good claim to be the most important political thinker that you have never heard of, Kingsnorth writes. Unlike Marx, he did not found a global movement or inspire revolution. Unlike Hayek, he did not rewrite the economic rules of modern world. Kohr was a modest, self-deprecating man, but this was not the reason his ideas have been ignored by movers and shakers in the half-century since they were produced. They have been ignored because they do not flatter the egos of the power-hungry, be they revolutionaries or plutocrats. In fact, Kohr's message is a direct challenge to them. Wherever something is wrong, Kohr insisted something is too big. So the answer to the problem cannot be to tackle them with more of the same, with ways that are part of the problem, with centralization by a global governance, with building bigger units by closer fiscal unions. If you're standing on the brink, the best step is one back, not forward, Leopold-Kohr said in a metaphor. Or in other terms, as we can read, if moral, physical, or political misery is nothing but a function of size, if the only problem is one of bigness, the only solution must lie in the cutting down of the substances and organisms which have outgrown the natural limits. The problem is not to grow, but to stop growing. The answer, not unions, but division. But there are more insights that Leopold-Kohr can deliver for solutions to current problems, not very much discussed in these days when the economic issues are so dominant, is the question how to cope with limited national resources and environmental pollution. Experts say that technological solutions are only one way to find a way to solve the problem of growing use of resources by a growing world population. And yet in the 1950s, Leopold-Kohr did not believe in technocratic solutions. Against the zeitgeist, he was never in favor of nuclear energy, as many were in these times, because nuclear power plants are never controllable by human beings, he said. Instead of increasing the amount of energy, he demanded a complete change of life, the reduction of consumer goods by a lifestyle that is not based on an increasing number of goods, but on other values that make life better, like sociability and unspoiled nature. And Leopold-Kohr is in favor of less traffic in cities and between cities, as I already said. So Kohr demands, already in the 1950s, what nowadays would be called a reduction of the ecological footprint. Leopold-Kohr was a dreamer, was a visionary who was not always taken serious during his lifetime. Some critics say he was a romanticist. Kohr was not unhappy with this ascription as a romanticist, because the romanticist, he said, is able to see more than the functionality of the world we live in. He also sees the beauty. He also has time for his fellow man and appreciates their creativity and dignity as well as his own. And he is able to enjoy the good things in life. But not to take a technocratic look on life and society also allows to rethink what is necessary in order to build a society that offers the chance to lead a life in peace, freedom, and wealth to as many people as possible. By the way, a question that already Aristotle tried to find an answer for. Some old-fashioned, so-called old-fashioned values as modesty, thoughtfulness, and solidarity become more important in this view. However, they are not conservative, but rather progressive. It is not a way back to the human scale, but forward to the human scale, as the human scale is the only one that can be surveyed and anticipated, as Leopold-Kohr said 60 years ago, with words that are still relevant to the current situation. Last thing, the principal device for eliminating the terrors of violent economic fluctuations is the creation of production and market units of so small a size that their activities can at all times be surveyed and anticipated. And central phrase is man, not society, not a party, religion, ideology is the measure of all things. Thank you for your attention.